please welcome the president of Stony Brook University, Andrea Goldsmith.
Thank you so much. That was my introduction. I have the incredible honor of introducing my distinguished guests. So welcome to this afternoon's presidential lecture, featuring a conversation with my friend, my mentor, and my colleague of nearly 30 years, John Hennessy, who is also a very proud Stony Brook distinguished alumnus and an internationally recognized leader in higher education.
Thank you.
So for everyone joining us here in person or online, our time promises to be an engaging and truly enjoyable discussion on leadership, institutional transformation, and the future of the academy. And you have the incredible privilege of having that conversation with John Hennessy. And John has such an impressive bio. We would spend the entire hour if I was going to go through all the details. So I can only provide a few highlights if we're going to have any time for our conversation. So many people probably don't know that John grew up on Long Island in Huntington. So he's a Long Island boy. Then he left to earn his undergraduate degree in electrical engineering at Villanova University, but he came back. He came back to Stony Brook to pursue his master's and doctorate in computer science right here at this university. Thank you for coming back to Stony Brook and being one of our
delighted to be here.
Most amazing alums. I just gave him a pin. Hopefully he'll wear it proudly. So he joined Stanford faculty in 1977. He had something like 19 offers from academic offers because he did such an incredibly impressive PhD thesis in the late 70s when computer science and computer architecture in particular was in its very early days. So he joined as an assistant professor at Stanford in 1977 and has been on the faculty of Stanford ever since, doing pioneering research in computer architecture, teaching and mentoring generations of students and colleagues, including my husband, Arturo Saltz, who started his research in John's research group. And he also wrote the definitive book on computer architecture, together with David Patterson, which is now in its 7th edition, including 3 editions he did while university president. So I think that deserves a round of applause also. Now, his exceptional leadership was recognized early on at Stanford. He was first tapped to lead Stanford's Computer Systems Lab, which was the only lab that was joint between computer science and electrical engineering, mirroring his undergraduate degree in electrical engineering and graduate degree in computer science. He was then elevated to be the chair of Stanford's Computer Science Department. And when I joined Stanford, he was our visionary dean of engineering. From there, he was promoted to be university provost, but not for long. Less than a year later, he became Stanford's 10th president. And his impact on Stanford during his 16 years as president was profound. He impacted Stanford in every dimension. Research, particularly interdisciplinary research, education, particularly interdisciplinary education, in medicine, in the arts. He built an entire arts district at Stanford. Innovation, of course, as an incredibly innovative president and an entrepreneur. And I could go on and on about all the areas that John impacted as president. He set incredibly high aspirations for Stanford, which, when he became president, was not the Stanford of today. He believed Stanford had no limits. It could aspire to do anything that it wanted to. And he made it happen. And I know this personally because I saw it unfold as a Stanford faculty member and a member of the Faculty Senate, which worked very closely with the Stanford leadership, and John in particular. I had the privilege of working with him throughout his tenure as president. Now, John also demonstrates there is university life after being a university president, so I'm happy to see that. He's currently the co-founder.
After 16 years, Andrea, of course.
Okay, all right, well, I say I'm going to be a long-term president here, so 16 years is a good number. I aspire to be like John in so many ways, so maybe I will be a 16-year president. He's currently the co-founder and director of the Knight Hennessy Scholars Program at Stanford, which is the largest university-wide, fully endowed graduate fellowship in the world, really generating the next generation of leaders for the world. It's a beautiful program, and he talks about it in his book, which you'll be able to get signed from him later. He's also chairman of the board of Alphabet, and he serves on the board of trustees for the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. And in addition to his academic successes, he's a pioneering entrepreneur. He co-founded MIPS, computer systems based on his research in computer architecture. And he also co-founded Atheros Communication, which was a competitor to my own startup. So we've been competitors as well as colleagues. His work and impact have been recognized. Again, I could spend the next hour reading all the awards and honors. But he's actually received the most prestigious awards in engineering and technology, including the ACM Turing Prize and the National Academy of Engineering Draper Prize. Personally, I view John as the most transformative and inspirational leader in higher education. I greatly admire him, and I've sought his advice on leadership for most of my academic career, including before I interviewed for the Stony Brook role, during my interview for the Stony Brook role, and after my achieving the Stony Brook role. I am so thrilled and proud that you are here for this inauguration week, coming back to your alma mater, which served as the foundation of the beginning of your faculty career. So welcome back. And this is such a magical moment that our road to Stanford, from Stanford, has led us together again here at Stony Brook. Please join me in welcoming John.
Full circle moment. Thank you. Andrea, okay. That's an introduction my father would love and my mother would believe. So.
Oh, okay, all right. Got the right balance. That's always important as a university leader, right? So I'm going to launch into the questions, and we'll have a few minutes for questions from the audience at the end. First, I'm going to start with some history. So you came to Stony Brook as a doctoral computer science student in 1974, early days of computer science. But we at Stony Brook were still a very young university, and computer science here at Stony Brook was celebrating its 5th birthday when you came here as a doctoral student. We were not an established university or an established computer science department. Why did you decide to pursue your PhD here? And could you share some memories about your experience from that time here at Stony Brook?
Sure. Well, it was an up-and-coming department. You're right, it was a young department. It was hiring a lot of great faculty at the time. And so I finished my undergraduate degree in 3.5 years. I was rushing to get through and to marry the person who's been my wife now for 52 years. So I was...
Also an Andrea, by the way.
Yes, yes. So we were trying to get reunited after having been split apart during our undergraduate years, right? Our first date was my senior prom. So we had been in high school. So we had been separated during that time. So I wanted to get my life back together. I wanted to start graduate school in the middle of the year. Many places will not let you start in the middle of the year, but Stony Brook would, and several other places would. But Stony Brook gave me something else that was critical at that point. Since I had exhausted my savings and undergraduate education, they gave me financial aid. And that made it possible for me to go to graduate school.
Thank you, Stony Brook, for having that vision.
Yes, exactly.
To bring John here.
So I had another great, early on, I got handed a great thesis topic that my advisor at Stony Brook loved by somebody who was at Brookhaven and was on the Brookhaven faculty. And he gave me a problem in real-time control. It was the early days of microprocessors. They're just coming out. They're not being used for computing yet. They're being used for control in laboratory. And he gave me this problem of building a real-time scanner that would guarantee precise real-time operation. And it turned out I worked on that problem, found some interesting approaches. And as I was getting ready to go on the road to do my interviews, I only interviewed at academic places. I wanted to go stay in the university. As I was getting ready to go on the road, 2 of the most famous people in the field at the time published in the same area. It was like rocket fuel. All of a sudden, my thesis was mainstay to this kind of important new area. And as you said, I interviewed at 14, 15 places. And by the time, Stanford was the very last one. So by the time I got there, I had a well-rehearsed talk. And I had answered every question under the sun. So it went really well, and I got an offer, and we decided to move to California.
And you stayed there ever since?
Yeah.
So what attracted you to join Stanford when you finished your PhD? Obviously, there were many other universities you could have joined at the time. And how was your research there shaped by the culture and climate of Stanford and Silicon Valley in the late 1970s, which was a very different time?
Very, very different time. What attracted me, well, it was a great department, right? Both the EE and the CS departments were very strong at the time. They made me a good offer, not the best offer financially, but a reasonable offer, except I didn't know what houses cost like in the Bay Area at the time.
And that was the 70s.
Yeah, and that was the 70s. That was
now.
the 70s. It was, but I think I found that attractive, and I wanted to I'm an experimental computer scientist. I'm a systems builder. That's what I do. So there was an environment to do that was attractive to me. So I decided that it was a good thing to do. You're right that it was a very different era. It's called Silicon Valley because at the time, they were all silicon companies. There were no computing companies. I arrived before Apple Computer started, right? It was the Homebrew Computer Club, which met up at SLAC on the Stanford campus, that Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak used to go to and talk about building computers at home. So it was just the very beginning of that. And in fact, for me, for the first probably 15 years of my career, if I wanted to go back and talk to the industry leaders, you got on a plane and you flew to Boston or you flew to New York to go to IBM or Digital Equipment Corporation. And it all changed, obviously, over time, but it was an amazing transformation.
What do you think were the ingredients in Silicon Valley that allowed it to become, from what it was in the 70s, which was, or even the early 80s or throughout the 80s with the defense industry collapsing, to become this incredible hotbed of innovation and attractor of entrepreneurs and technologists?
Yeah, it's a very strong entrepreneurial environment. The Valley is a place where if you pursue a great idea and it doesn't work out, your life isn't over. You can pursue other careers. There's a lot of loyalty to technology as opposed to loyalty to companies per se. That's very different than on the East Coast. So those things made a difference. Obviously, the rise of the microprocessor became critical. Stanford's close proximity to the Valley also was a crucial aspect since not all the companies have come out of Stanford, obviously. There are a lot of startups that don't. But a couple of the most transformative companies came out of there. Yahoo and Google and Cisco that really just changed the whole environment.
And you yourself participated in the innovation ecosystem, taking the risk architecture that you had really done your research on, which was truly pioneering and crazy. Probably a lot of people thought it was a crazy way to think about computer architecture, of reducing it down to the
simplicity.
bare minimum. And so what inspired you to go out and do MIPS? What was that journey like? And when you came back to Stanford, why did you come back and what did you bring back with you?
Yeah, it's good questions. So in some ways, I was a reluctant entrepreneur. We published our papers and we thought the results were so compelling. Here, 4 graduate students had designed something that was 2, 3 times, 4 times better than what a team of 200 engineers had done at Intel. We thought, this is obvious. People are going to pick this up and run with it. And just the opposite happened. They thought, this is crazy. This is a great academic project, but it will never work in the real world. And that was the view. It's very easy when you have a new and revolutionary technology. If you invested in the technology, you see the glass as half full. But everybody else sees it as half empty, and they don't see any way to fill it up. And that's a key difference. So we went out and we told the investors I was coming back to the university and I would stay for 15 or 18 months roughly. And that made some investors reluctant to invest because of that. They were worried. Even though I had 2 co-founders, I was the kind of recognized public presence in the field. So I went and did it, and then I decided I missed students. I missed the life of the university. I missed working on the next new thing as opposed to pouring all your energy into one product that you have to deliver for customers. It's a different kind of environment. And I decided I wanted my life in the university. I could continue to be involved as a consultant and an assistant, but I would have my primary presence at the university.
It's interesting. I think that I had a similar experience going out into industry to start a company where we were going to do Wi-Fi distribution through the home, and nobody believed it could work. When we did our first demo, people thought there was some wire in the back that was connecting it. And in some ways, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a little crazy and very optimistic to believe that this technology, which you've only got a prototype of, could actually be transformative.
Right.
And then I had the same experience where a couple years into my startup, my co-founder said, well, what if to be successful, you would have to stay in the company and not go back to the university? And it was the same thing. I said, my heart's in the university. It's always been in the university. Our students are the most inspiring thing that you get to go every day with the privilege of educating them and mentoring them and shaping the next generation and your colleagues. And just the mission of a university is so compelling that I never thought about staying. But then you went and did a second company, which was Atheros. So why would you do a second company?
Oh, well, that's interesting because our colleague, Teresa Ming, came to me. And she had been working on low-power GPS and figuring out how to do low-power GPS, which is a problem that the military was particularly interested in. They wanted to put soldiers in the field with GPS without stacks of batteries. So, and of course, GPS is a receiver. So if you can do low-power receiver, you can do low-power radio receiver, right? And so that was the key insight. And at the time, there was no Wi-Fi standard yet. And many of the early attempts to do it, which were based on bipolar approaches, had not worked and were certainly not suitable for battery use. So we kind of put this plan together. And when we first went to talk to the venture capitalist, they brought in their technology experts and they said, you're too early, come back in 5 years. And Teresa was convinced that it could be done. So we found 2 investors who would buy into it, and they gave us a go, and sure enough, Teresa was right. And we hired incredible. At the time, you could hire the very best CMOS RF people you wanted because everybody was thinking, well, if we can make this work, it'll be transformative.
And Atheros really was a transformative company. I think the Wi-Fi we all enjoy is because of a lot of the innovations that happened at Atheros.
Yeah, it was a big advantage of being there at the very beginning because then you could also participate and help shape the standard and make it work. We had one interesting moment. So at one point, first of all, Intel tried to buy the company, but they made a not very good offer. So we said no immediately. Then they turned around and bought an Australian company and declared that Wi-Fi was going to be in all laptops. And at first we thought, oh, we're in big trouble because now Intel, this massive company, is going to come into space. In fact, just the opposite happened. Intel came into the space and every other PC manufacturer was looking for an access to the technology. So that made the company take off. And it's that unpredictability, you just don't know when it's going to happen.
Right, which is part of the beauty of being an entrepreneur is you don't know what's ahead and you just are open to seeing what challenges there are and seizing them, and similar to being a university president in some ways. When you came back to the university, what lessons from your startups did you bring back? How did that change either your leadership or your research or your teaching?
I think one of the things you have to learn in a startup environment is how to make decisions under uncertainty. Because so much of there's time pressure, you have a limited amount of capital, you have to get to a certain point, there's enormous time pressure, and there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of things are gray. And that's one of the hardest things to do in any leadership position, but especially in the academy. In the academy, look, lots of us, we wait until we have all the evidence before we write QED, right? We wait till that moment. You can't do that in a startup. And I think in complex organizations, you also can't do that. You've got to make decisions when you just have some of the data available and do the best you can.
Right, and certainly this is a very uncertain time, which I'll come to in a later question, but having that flexibility and insight from making decisions in a startup, I think, is very valuable in any leadership position, which brings me to my next question about your book, Leading Matters, which I told John as we were walking over here, it's the only leadership book I've ever read, because I don't think you can learn about leadership by reading about it. You learn about it by doing it. But again, having experienced John's leadership, I did want to see what he had to say about leadership. And in your book, you describe the most important traits of a great leader to include not necessarily what people would expect, to include humility, authenticity, trust, empathy, courage, collaboration, innovation, and storytelling. among others. Why are these leadership traits so important, and how did you leverage them as Stanford's president?
You know, they're all, each of them contributes in a different way. Let's just take two of them. Take humility. Humility is critical because you want to be able to say, I need help. I don't have all the answers. And if you have humility, it's easy to say, I'm not the expert on this. Somebody else on the team should come in and help me. It also creates a participatory method of governance so that everybody is contributing. If you act like the smartest person in the room all the time, what will happen is no one will challenge you. And now you're setting yourself up for a disaster, right? And I wanted people to challenge me all the time. Storytelling, whenever you do it, whether it's a startup or a university, you're trying to craft a vision of what could be. How could we get to something that's truly extraordinary and really make a difference, whether it's a startup that's going to have a tremendous success or it's a university that aspires to new levels of greatness. I think that storytelling, that being able to weave a story is absolutely crucial.
And what would you say was your biggest challenge when you were Stanford president, and how did you bring these traits to addressing that challenge?
You know, I think one of we certainly had our series of challenges. Not everything works exactly the way you like, and there are various things. But probably the 2008-2009 financial crisis was the biggest one. We lost about 30% of the value of our endowment, basically in a 6-month period, and that created an enormous budget hole. On top of that, we had just made a public announcement that we were making a major increase in financial aid. And so what happened, we made this major increase, and we were betting on the future. We were going to deficit fund it for some number of years before we could actually raise the money. And all of a sudden, the endowment gets hit really hard. We knew we had to adjust the university's budget in some fundamental way. So the provost and I, the first thing we did was we took a 10% salary cut, and we asked all the deans and vice presidents to take a voluntary 5% salary cut. And then we worked with the faculty. You remember, you were chair of the faculty senate then.
That's right.
During those times. And so we had to convey to the faculty this uncertainty and the fact that we also expected fundraising to be negatively impacted because the stock market had dropped so precipitously. So we needed to make that adjustment, and we needed to do it fast. And the faster we did it, one of the things I learned, having done a layoff when we were in a startup, the best way to get through a layoff is to do it quickly and get it over with, right? Get through the dark tunnel and get to the other side where there's light, and then try to resume things. So we had one rough year. We stopped a bunch of things. We had no searches for a year. We had salary freeze for a year. But after that, things got better. So it took us about less than 18 months to get through the crisis. And then we could revamp. And we were out hiring when other institutions were still cutting budgets. So that was advantageous.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, again, I was in the faculty senate and chaired the faculty senate throughout this period. And that's one of the things I learned a lot about leadership in a university is making hard decisions quickly. And I think having been in a startup, and it's hard to make decisions quickly in academia, and doing it in a transparent way. I mean, it was shared with the faculty senate. We talked about it in the Senate. I was actually on the in the cabinet as the Senate chair. So there was so much transparency in talking about the decisions that were made. You couldn't necessarily consult the faculty because there wasn't time.
Right.
And there were plans to make, I think a 5, 10, and 15% budget cut depending on how bad things got. And we didn't have to make the bigger cuts because you operated quickly. Sometimes a budget cut can be an opportunity to figure out what you should shut down, because it's very hard to shut things down in a university. But I really learned so much about university leadership then, to make decisions quickly, engage your community, but don't be afraid to be bold. If you tell people why you're making difficult decisions, even in universities, they understand. And even if they don't agree, at least they understand why you're doing it.
Yes, communicate, communicate, communicate. Because if you get the rationale out there, they may not still agree with your rationale, but at least they understand why you made that decision.
Right, and the stock market rebounded more quickly than anyone expected.
It did.
And we were in a position where, regardless of what happened, we were in good shape, and that's why we could take advantage of it and take a crisis. No good crisis should go unexploited. Other universities were cutting back, and we moved forward. And I think that's a lesson for Stony Brook at this moment in time of challenge. If we're bold and seize the opportunity when other universities are pulling back to move forward,
absolutely,
we can leapfrog in ways that we couldn't otherwise. And I saw that at Stanford, actually, in that crisis. So as an entrepreneur turned president myself, I'm interested in your thoughts on how your experience, you talked a little bit about how being able to make quick decisions or watching a layoff in a startup impacted your leadership, but maybe more broadly. How does an entrepreneurial mindset allow you to lead a university effectively? And what might it make more challenging?
Well, in the end, it's about innovation, right? My predecessor used to say, every day in a university should be a first day, should be a new day. So I think it's about innovation. It's about innovation in a startup. It's about innovation in an old company, because if an old company fails to innovate, they are writing their recipe for the end of that company. And it's about innovation in universities. Yes, we are the guardians and conservers of the past, but we also are the places that look to the future. And so that innovation aspect of it, the willingness to be able to try things and bet on new activities and new directions, I think is absolutely crucial. And that's why your experience as an entrepreneur is particularly relevant.
So how do you innovate in universities when faculty have tenure? You know, you can't fire them. You can't necessarily, it's like herding cats to do things with faculty in a university. How do you get people to
It is herding cats, but if you have good cat food and you put it in the right place, the cats will go there. So it's carrots, not sticks. Sticks don't work well in a university for exactly the reasons. And I'd much rather use carrots whenever I can use carrots. So we would try to do various things. So when we started a lot of the interdisciplinary institutes you mentioned, we would give them half a faculty billet, and we'd say, go find a partner in the university that wants to take a half a billet from their reserves and put it up to match that, so we can hire in a new area. And it bridged all these areas that we didn't have a faculty in otherwise. So I think you can find ways to innovate that way. It demands crafting a vision and finding resources. Resources are always in short supply in universities. But if you can find them, then you can do new things.
And, you know, I'll say one of the other things I saw when I was at Stanford is that it's hard to do interdisciplinary research and teaching in universities because universities are built as disciplinary structures. You have departments that sit in schools, and they're all based on disciplinary knowledge. So how do you foster interdisciplinary research? And what I saw at Stanford is it was a leader in creating these institutes and centers. One of the Senate meetings I had as faculty chair was to just talk about the value of interdisciplinary research and centers. They're not detracting from departments and schools. They're adding value. So you innovated at Stanford in this interdisciplinary research and teaching. What are the areas that we as universities should be innovating today? What should we be doing differently than what we've done?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, you know, the overlap between the biomedical sciences in general and the rest of the university is so large, and Stony Brook has the great advantage, as Stanford does as well, to have its medical school and the rest of its campus on the same campus. That's an enormous advantage in an area that's absolutely crucial. So there are great opportunities there. In the age of AI, I think AI will be the most important modern scientific tool. It may not be as important as the microscope was, but it'll be close. And I say that because its breadth and depth of impact will both be large. Virtually, it's going to change the way we do lots of research, and it's going to dramatically transform that research and hopefully enhance our ability to move forward quickly in fields, because research is a long process. If we could speed it up, we could deliver the results to the American public sooner.
So how should we as educators think about using AI to educate our students, to teach them how to use it, but also to figure out what students are falling off track or how to better mentor them or teach them?
So I think we have a variety of different uses. I think we will get smart AI tutors that will be able to help students and help students who are struggling, as well as challenge students who are ready to move faster than the rest of perhaps the class is willing to move. I think both of those are doable problems, and Sal Khan and a number of other groups are working on them. I think we'll see. I think we want to educate our students to be users of AI, because as jobs change and there is less demand in some areas, more. The one thing I'll tell you is that people who know how to use AI will be the survivors in this and the ones who do well. So we need to teach them that. How we actually incorporate it without throwing out the things we really love. So think about writing. AI is a tool for writing. It's helpful. On the other hand, critical reasoning that goes into writing something, I don't want that to disappear. I want that to be in the mind of the creator, not in the mind of an LLM, for example. So we're going to have to think about how to use those tools in an intelligent and useful fashion that encourage our students to become lifelong learners.
Right, and I like to say that AI will not replace what's truly human about intelligence, creativity, and vision, and instinct, and collaboration, and perspective. And finding your voice as a writer is important too,
Absolutely.
right? That you can ask AI to generate a report for you, or a sonnet, or an essay, but it's not your voice. And if you don't have your own voice that's part of what you write, then you're completely replaceable by AI, which I think goes back to your point that if our students don't know how to use it coupled with their own human intelligence, then they will be replaceable. Do you think AI is going to take all our jobs?
No, I don't think it's going. I think, like other technologies, it's going to transform what jobs exist, right? It turns out after the turn of the century, there were lots of jobs that since then have disappeared, right? I mean, that were eliminated by technology. So it turns out telephone operator was one of the top 10 jobs for women in the early 1900s. Well, nobody is a telephone operator anymore, right? Other jobs, if you look at the progress in computing, it hasn't led to a reduction in programming jobs. It's led to more programming jobs. Now, things may change in the future a bit, particularly for introductory work. I think the thing that's going to be hard for society is this technology will change the jobs quickly, much more quickly than previous technology revolutions. And that's going to create some social unrest, some need for reskilling and retraining of people as that occurs.
And it's also disrupting jobs that were secure before. Like you think about computer programmers, that AI can write code now, which means that, interestingly, we've seen a 25% decrease in computer science majors across the country because AI can write code for them.
Might actually, we had so many computer science
That's
majors,
a good thing,
it might
right?
be a good.
That's a good thing.
So, in fact, at Stanford, we've seen a decrease in CS majors, but the number of engineering majors is the same. So EE has gone up, mechanical engineering has gone up. So I think people see, well, maybe I'll go into these things where I'll use AI, but I won't be replaceable.
Right, and you have to build the hardware and the algorithms and everything else, which requires this or use it for robotics or drones or automated cars. So you need all those skills. And I think that goes back to the notion of coupling AI with the domain expertise to apply it to a broad range of areas. So it's a very exciting time, I think, for technology, but also fraught time. Technology, as you say, can be disruptive.
And misuse. I mean, I think we're all worried about misuse of the technology, right? And we saw Anthropic pull back their release because they realized that it could be used as a cyber weapon. And they're not ready for that yet. We're not ready for it.
So how do we protect against misuse in a technology that is evolving as fast as AI is?
I think it's going to require two things. It's going to require some step up in terms of the ability of our law enforcement organizations to deal with these kinds of things because they're not used to it at this scale and this complexity. And it's going to require the companies to be careful about trying to restrain misuse. They may not be able to close every single door on the misuse, but they can certainly make it harder for people to misuse this technology. And we're going to need both for this to work well.
Do you think policy has a role to play? If you look back, for example, on social media, that it was never really controlled at all through any policies, and we see how it evolved and how dangerous it's been. Do you think policy has a role to play in helping to prevent AI's pitfalls?
Yeah, policy certainly has a role, whether it's through legislation or whether it's through cooperative agreements among companies. I think there certainly is a role. The difficulty with legislation is legislating a technology that's moving this fast.
Very difficult.
Seems fraught with difficulty.
Yeah, and it probably would be detrimental, and that's one of the concerns about a policy that can't keep up with the fast-changing technology, that it would be detrimental to the growth of the technology.
Yeah, I think Europe will be very restrictive about use of AI, and that's gonna have implications in terms of their ability to be at the cutting edge.
Yep. So let me turn to a different topic, which is mentoring. So you've been an outstanding mentor and role model for me and so many other students and faculty, entrepreneurs, engineers, and leaders. I mean, you really are an inspiration to so many of us. What role did mentors and supporters play in your career, and how do you approach mentoring as a result?
It's a good question. You know, I picked up various mentors along the way. I mean, starting here at Stony Brook, my PhD advisors, who gave me advice about how to write a good scientific paper, how to give a good presentation, the critical things that you need to do to be successful in the academy. And then a group of people at Stanford, senior faculty, who mentored me on how to build a research program, how to get research funding, the key things you have to do there. And then as I began to do more and more leadership things, I tried to learn from the people. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from the previous Dean of Engineering, Jim Gibbons, who said to me, he knew I was the finalist for the Dean of Engineering job. And he said to me, take the job of dean because you want to serve the students and faculty of the engineering school. Don't take it because it has this higher salary, it has a bigger office, it has a larger staff. Take it because you want to serve them. And that was the best advice I ever got, and I've stuck with that advice in all the leadership roles. So that's the advice I give to people. If you're thinking about a leadership role, remember, I'd say a university president it's at the top of the pyramid, but the pyramid is upside down, and the university president is the bottom, supporting all those faculty and students to do their work, because that's what universities do. Right. We support the great work of faculty and students in the university.
Right, and I've also always believed that a leadership role is really about empowering the people around you to be successful. That's the most important thing. And if you're taking a leadership job for title or power, you're probably not going to be a great leader.
You're not going to be a great leader.
Because you're not doing it for the right reasons. And I have to say that's, for me, been so remarkable about leading this university is we have such amazing people, faculty, students, healthcare workers, and supporting them is just a joy, and it's so incredibly rewarding. So I'm going to turn to another topic that's really interesting for Stony Brook. You've said, and for you, you've said that one of your regrets as Stanford president was not establishing a New York campus. This is also talked about in your book. And you did go down that path. I was at Stanford at the time by entering the competition to establish a campus on Roosevelt Island, not Governor's Island, Roosevelt Island, another island in New York Harbor. And Stanford ultimately withdrew from that competition. Could you share with us why Stanford, having a second campus across the country, was so compelling to you as Stanford's leader? And if there are any lessons from that experience that might be relevant as we, Stony Brook, establishes the New York Climate Exchange on that other island in New York Harbor, Governor's Island.
So look, New York City is an extraordinary place. There's nothing else like it in the country. Right, it is the head of and the heartbeat of a number of key industries. And what Mayor Bloomberg wanted to do was to really make New York a major center for technical innovation. And we had the feeling that the Bay Area was going to outgrow its capacity. It certainly strained its capacity. if you just look at traffic and housing, two of the biggest measures. So that was attractive to think about. Could you really form another major tech center for the country in New York City? And that was what was really attractive. And I think that's what got us excited about it. And as you said, it's a unique place, right? It is something really unique. Can you do something that's really differentiable and will really make a big difference in terms of doing it, right? In the end, we pulled out because we just found there were too many complications in doing it. It was hard enough to be thinking about being across the country, but then the local complications just made it too difficult for us to see how we could be successful.
And what do you think having a campus in New York City would have done for Stanford at Stanford? Because we think about that for Stony Brook. We have a campus in Southampton. We have Governor's Island. We're thinking about our New York City footprint. How does having these satellite campuses transform what happens on your main campus?
Yeah, so there were a lot of interesting questions about that. One of the issues we thought we could address is there were a number of people who wanted to be at Stanford but wanted to live on the East Coast. Well, if we had a campus in New York City, that was an interesting way to think about capturing that contingent of people. So there was a way to be transformative. We also believed it would be a great opportunity to establish a base where our undergraduates could spend time in the city. And the city is so different than the Bay Area, right? I mean, the Bay Area is very tech-centric, but it's suburban kind of. San Francisco is a beautiful city, but it's not a big city. It's not the same. So that was really attractive to think about. And the linkage to various industries, the finance industry, obviously, but also the media industry, which are anchored in New York, was something that wasn't well represented on campus. So there was an opportunity to reach out to a different sector of the economy and build some strengths with that.
So as an entrepreneur, did you find other ways to tap into the opportunities that you saw having a campus in New York once you decided not to do it?
So certainly a lot of that has happened online now. I mean, people, and accelerated by the pandemic for sure. I mean, people now regularly do courses remotely, Zoom everywhere. So there's been a change in usage that's enabled us to get some of that outreach. But I think we would continue to look for different ways to do things. We want to do anything like that. We felt we should do it for a really compelling reason, that we really saw we could do something different.
So you've led a research group, a CS department, an engineering school, a university, the board of Alphabet, and startups. How have your views and approaches to leadership evolved as you've taken on these different broader roles?
Well, certainly it's a learning as you said, learning about leadership is experiential. That's how you learn. And one of the things I learned along the way is small steps. You've got to learn how to climb that ladder, because when you get to a larger and larger organization, you're going to have more and more difficult decisions to deal with. And having dealt with decisions in the small then makes it easier to deal with them as you go up the ladder. And I think that's really changed my view. The one thing I think I've tried to stick with all the time is I used to, when we go to the faculty senate, I was meeting with my colleagues. It's true I was the university president, but I was there with a group of colleagues trying to talk about where we were going as a university and what issues we were trying to solve and address. And one of the great traditions of the faculty senate is that people can ask open questions to the president and provost. So it provides an opportunity for communication, and it helps remind everybody that we're on the same side. Right. Yes, we may be, some of us are in administrative roles, but we're working together for the good of the university.
One of the things that I say here is that I feel like I grew up in a university that had the very best shared faculty governance, shared governance between the leadership of the university and the faculty. We have a faculty and staff senate, so it's a little different. But I have open questions from faculty. They can ask me anything. Staff can ask me anything in the Senate. I think it's a wonderful model. And it's one I would like us to emulate more at Stony Brook, because I haven't seen a better shared governance model than the one at Stanford.
And there's another thing I learned along the way. If you want to be good at something, you have to be enthusiastic. You have to love it. You have to love it. And that's why you're going to be such a great president, because you love it.
I do love this place. It's a perfect place for me, and I'll talk about that more tomorrow, but thank you. I do love it, and I think everyone here knows how much I love being president of the #1 public university in New York. So bold and visionary leadership can be met with resistance and opposition, especially in academia or technology. You often cite the importance of Abraham Lincoln seizing important opportunities in the face of opposition from his own cabinet. What do you think is the best way to approach resistance or opposition to a bold idea and to get stakeholders behind it?
So certainly communication, and try to get people behind it. I tried some things that didn't work, actually. Sometimes because there was faculty resistance, or we couldn't get everybody aligned, or we couldn't find the right leaders for things. So sometimes you have to know when to pull the plug, but you've also got to decide which are the things that you really need to stick to that are fundamental things. And I think, the example I always cite is Lincoln doing the Emancipation Proclamation. His entire cabinet is against him, but he realizes that this is his shot. This is his chance to fix this incredible sin and stain that was in the Constitution. So he goes after it. I think there are some things like that you have to decide, and you've got to stick to your guns. You have to try to get as many allies as you can in that process, and you've got to be respectful of the people who are opposed and try to explain your rationale. But in the end, you may have to forge ahead and do it.
One of the things that I learned from another great leader, our Chancellor John King, we had a fireside chat last Saturday, was talking about the importance of listening to your critics. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and I always assume people have the best of intentions, even when they're criticizing what you're doing. And I think that helps a lot when you're in a leadership job where you have to make difficult decisions, is not just hearing what people have to say, but really listening, taking in what they have to say, but then also making the tough decision of saying, this is a difficult thing that maybe not everyone's behind. Maybe very few people are behind, but as the leader, I'm going to make this decision because I think it's the right thing. And then also recognizing when you make a mistake and changing your mind. It's okay. The worst thing I think you can do as a leader is not make a decision. You take in all the input you can, listen and try to make the best decision you can with the information you have in the face of uncertainty, but then also recognize when you've made a mistake. And again, I saw you do that again and again at Stanford, which was very inspirational, but also a great learning experience. So that leads me to another question very relevant today about university leadership today. So university leaders are currently under much higher scrutiny, and they face a broader range of challenges than in the past. In fact, the tenure of university presidents has shortened dramatically, and we've seen university presidents lose their jobs in a heartbeat. And we've seen universities under attack like never before. How should university leaders navigate these disruptive times? And what do you think are the leadership traits and approaches that are most important to us university leadership in navigating these challenging times?
So I think there's two parts to this. One is articulating our message and our role and our contribution to society more clearly, and what's happening, and the fact that many institutions, both publics like Stony Brook and privates like Stanford, are addressing affordability, are trying to make sure that students can afford to attend and be successful. So I think we need to get over that piece of it. But we also need to listen to some of the objections that exist out there and ask ourselves, what do we need to do to change? And I think that message is finally getting through. We've lost some of the public trust. We have to rebuild that trust. That's quite crucial. Universities had been immune to the loss of trust in institutions for many years. And in the last 5 years or so, we've we've lost some of that. So we've got to rebuild it, because I think long term, we are dependent on public financing for research, for example, and that depends on the public supporting the kind of work we do.
That's right, and that's not a brand new phenomenon. As you point out, a lot of people think universities being under attack now is a new thing. For the last decade, we've seen universities losing the trust of the public, and it's partly all institutions are losing trust, but it's also on us. And I think recognizing flaws in our approach, our own shortcomings, and addressing them while at the same time articulating the incredible value of higher education as, a vehicle for upward mobility and prosperity and national security and our leadership in science and innovation and technology. There's so many things that we can tell about universities being so important to this country, but we stopped telling that story. I'm not sure why. I guess we thought we were.
Well, we took it for granted, I suspect.
We did take it for granted, and we don't anymore, so that's
right.
an important time. So my last question before I open it up to a few audience questions is, what do you think are the greatest opportunities and challenges ahead for your alma mater? And how do we seize those opportunities and mitigate those challenges? And I'm paying a lot of attention to the answer to this question.
Well, that's your job to figure that out. I think be ambitious. Be ambitious. Find a strategy that fits Stony Brook in a unique way as a great public institution. That's a lot of what goes on. Rally the alumni. That's a tool that universities have, alumni that are devoted to the place and love it and believe it's really made an important contribution in their lives. So those are the things that you begin to shape a strategy around. And then what can Stony Brook do that's different and unique in its own and rooted in it? So whether it's the climate activity on Governor's Island, or it's something that's unique to this, or it's the use of Southampton in a unique way. I think these are all things you can try to figure out as a way to go forward to make an even larger contribution on behalf of Stony Brook.
Yeah, it's one of the favorite questions I got during the interview was someone remarked on the fact that when this campus was founded, the governor at the time, Rockefeller, said, this is going to be an institution to stand with the finest in the country, and maybe someday it will be the Berkeley of the East. And someone asked me about that in the interview. And I said, I don't think any organization should look to be like another one. They need to take advantage of what's unique about the organization in this moment in time and its place. And I said, and when Stony Brook does that, we will be the #1 public university, not just in New York, but in the country.
Yeah.
And then Berkeley will look to us as
yes, exactly.
They want to be the Stony Brook of the West. But it really reflects on what you said. What is unique? There's so many incredibly unique things about Stony Brook. I'd never heard of Stony Brook growing up in California, and I didn't know much about it until coming here as president. We have so many ingredients that I think we have to be bold and ambitious, especially at this challenging time. But really, as you say, take advantage of our unique attributes, being in a powerful and visionary state, being close to New York City, having our Southampton campus and this campus, and incredibly inspiring students that are educated at $7,000 a year tuition, which makes our story very easy to tell. So before wrapping up, I want to open it up to a few questions from the audience. We have some mic runners, so if you could raise your hand, someone will bring a mic to ask a question. There's a question here up front. I
have a loud voice.
Okay, we can do
Okay.
that.
You mentioned IBM, DEC, Motorola, all these companies, Kodak, Xerox. These companies are going through another change now. So what do you think caused those companies to falter? And what can leaders do today in this rapidly changing environment?
Yeah. I mean, companies come and go, so one has to expect. The question was, what about all the companies that have faded over time? IBM, Digital Equipment Corporation, Motorola, that have faded over time. I think a couple of things. First of all, probably some failure to innovate on the core and look for growth, look for new customers. The other thing you notice about the computing industry is everybody gets killed from below. It's the upstart who comes into the field that you didn't realize. Thinking about how you do that innovation thing is absolutely crucial. I remember, I mean, one of the things that when we started MIPS, somebody said to me, who partially inspired us to go start the company, was people won't sign up for this product because it obsoletes their existing products. I said, well, it obsoletes it because they're better.
Yeah.
So I've always told people, you know, it's better to shoot yourself in the foot than to wait for somebody to shoot you in the gut. So, which is a crude way of saying you have to obsolete your own products and move forward. And I think having that innovative drive is absolutely crucial. Sustaining it over 50 or 60 years, I think, is challenging. It's really challenging.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned what's basically the innovator's dilemma is that if you innovate, you can put yourself out of business because your main product is disrupted. Other questions from the audience? There's one back there and one up in front.
So I want to ask you about, since you talked about your really interdisciplinary background in not just like STEM, but like in art side as well. So what I was wondering is, I'm a PhD student, and from my experience in engaging with undergraduates, something that I observed is that students are mostly, at least, aiming for that like a very formulaic pathway towards a certain career. And as someone who transitioned from power systems to quantum engineering, what I found from my experience at least is that you have to be really open to exploration. And part of that is, I think, comes down to...
Could you ask a question? Sorry, there's other people that...
Yeah, so part of that comes down to like striking a balance between explorability, but also like ticking the right boxes to ensure that you're at the right place, you know, when you're accessing opportunities. So in your experience and in your opinion, how can students find that right balance when navigating careers?
Well, I'm a big believer in doing something you really love and doing it at an exceptional level, really doing it well, putting your whole self into it. That way, you'll love what you're doing. Perhaps you're going to be in a different kind of role than you anticipated initially when you went off to school. But you'll find something you really love doing. And if you do it really well, you can forge a path that way, and that's what I believe in.
Yeah, and I've always said that to students when they come and they say, what should I study or what should I go to graduate school? I don't know if there's going to be a job in this area. And I say the exact same thing. If you do what you love, you will be good at it, you will enjoy it, and you will find your path. If you do what you don't love, then you're going to be miserable even if you get a job. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to go down that way. More questions? There's one right here in front. Cam, go ahead.
Okay, well, one of the projects the two of you worked on together at Stanford was the benchmark study of undergraduate education at Stanford. So beyond you convened the committee and we served as beyond the question you were working to party benefit.
Yep.
So I wonder, what do you think about innovation in undergraduate education at Stony Brook for 21st century and beyond?
That's your question, Andrew.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I would say one of the things we need to think about is AI. How do we integrate AI so that every student, no matter their discipline, knows how to use it as a tool and not a crutch, so that they will be AI-proof. They will have jobs in the AI economy by really tapping what's uniquely human of creativity and vision and these things. I think the other thing, and SUNY, State University of New York, has just introduced, and I know Stanford has as well, a notion of civic discourse as a requirement for undergraduates. One of the things, John and I were talking earlier, that I've seen in my decades-long career as an academic is that it used to be, and certainly when I was a student, I went to university to learn. You know, I went to be exposed to teachers and other students that had grown up in different places and had different experiences and thought about things differently than I did. And I remember, now, the conversations in my electrical engineering classes weren't as interesting as the ones in my political science classes at Berkeley. But you know, the general degree requirements is where you came together regardless of your major and engaged with people about complex topics and really learned how to engage as a citizen of the world. I like to think we are training the next leaders and the citizens of the world. And that's changed. And I think part of it is social media, part of it is cultural, that I see students come to universities today to teach or to preach rather than to learn. They come with set ideas. I think social media does have a role in that, or maybe it's culture or political division. And so they aren't engaging with people that have very different views in a respectful, intellectual way. And we saw that play out with the protests where, I mean, the Middle East is a complex place, and the issues in the Middle East are very complex. So to put on a placard the solution to problems in the Middle East without understanding this complex history and the challenges and making things better, to me is not what I would aspire for our students or our faculty. It wasn't just students that were coming with very fixed ideas, it was faculty as well. And we even saw, I wasn't at Stony Brook then, but we saw faculty that were really moving into indoctrinating their students rather than teaching them all of the complexities of these issues. So I think as an educational institution, we have an obligation to really create spaces, encourage dialogues where people learn from each other, that they come open-minded, that even if they walk away not agreeing with the people that they're talking to, that they celebrate those conversations, and also celebrating what unites us rather than what divides us. One of the things that I've been incredibly proud of at Stony Brook is we have an interfaith council that brings together the leaders of the Jewish community, the Protestant community, Catholic and Muslim community. And they celebrate events together. We had an interfaith Thanksgiving dinner where we celebrated what was common. I went to the end of the Ramadan fast, and we celebrated what unites us. And I think that's really helped Stony Brook through all of the challenges. Sister Sana, who leads the Muslim group, she was here during 9/11. I mean, she saw how the community supported everybody. And I think that that's part of creating a culture and a climate where what our students learn, what's more important than what they learn in the classroom is what they learn outside. What is going to create the foundation for their professional and personal success? And I like to tell students, if you can't talk to someone respectfully that disagrees with you, you never know if your spouse or your employer or your mother or father-in-law is going to have a very different view than you do. And you have to be able to engage with people that disagree with you to be a successful human being. And I think that in terms of innovating in education, if I had to say anything, that's what I would like to see Stony Brook be as a model. So I don't know if you have other
That's a
views.
perfect answer, Andre.
Okay, I think sadly we're going to have to wrap up, but there is a book signing for John outside with his book, which again I highly recommend. So John, thank you. There are no words to really express my gratitude, not just for this event, but for coming here to be part of my inauguration. The interplay of our journey, the fact that you hired me as an assistant professor 27 years ago, and now you're here at your alma mater to be part of my presidential inauguration and to have this amazing discussion means more to me than I could really express. So thank you so much.
I'm so proud that Stony Brook has had the amazing good sense to pick you to be its next president.
I appreciate that. So this week, especially you coming back, has really showcased things about Stony Brook that are truly special. We've had events all week, starting in Southampton. Then we moved to New York City, and now back on our campus to really showcase our impact from Manhattan to Montauk. And everything that's exceptional about this university. You might wonder, why are we doing so many inauguration events? I mean, usually an inauguration is just a day or two, but I really wanted to take advantage of it to showcase what's exceptional about Stony Brook, including our incredible alumni like you, John. So thank you for coming, because this conversation has really showcased that we played a role in educating the foremost academic leader of his generation. So I want to thank you all for being here this afternoon, and I hope those of you that are here will join us for a reception and a book signing for your memoir, Leadership Matters, Lessons from My Journey, which, again, it's a beautiful book. It's not a long book, but it's inspirational, it's informative. It's the only book that I think anyone who wants to learn about leadership should read on leadership. And so please join me thanking John for this incredible discussion.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.